Right now, inside of the UFC, I believe that this is one of the deepest and most stacked the overall roster inside the organization has ever been. And what comes with that? Some very interesting style matchups and often a lot of turnover in terms of who the champion in each weight class is going to be. So in this video, I want to go through each division and talk about who I think the toughest fights are for each current champion, right? We're just wrapping up with UFC 306. Merab was able to beat Sugar Sean O'Malley, and we have a lot of interesting matchups coming up for some of these champions, but I want to highlight who I think the toughest matchups are for each current champ that we have inside of the UFC. But first, I want to highlight, what am I looking at here, right? In terms of criteria for this, which I don't necessarily know that there's criteria, but what really I was holding in mind here when it comes to who I think the toughest fights are going to be are people that are proven in the division, right? Like I said, the roster is incredibly deep. We see prospects burst onto the scene all the time. Right now we got like Montel Jackson, Peyton Talbot, Michael Morales. We have a lot of guys inside the organization that are budding stars or budding challengers, but we haven't seen them take on fighters inside the top 10. We haven't seen them thrown inside the Shark Tank per se. So we're going to go off of fighters that are proven. They've been thrown into a little bit of shark-infested waters or really thrown into shark-infested waters, so we know what they're about. And then again, stylistically troubling, right? I feel like that's just common sense when it comes to who's going to be the toughest matchup for our current champs. So starting with the flyweight division, working our way up to the heavyweight division. So the current champion inside the flyweight division, we have Alexandre Pantoja. Now, despite whether you like watching him or not, Pantoja is one of the greatest flyweights of all time. This guy has a very well-rounded skill set. He seems to get better and better throughout his career, and he's one of those guys who holds a lot of impressive wins, man. And he's got, the impressive wins over Royval, over Moreno, and he's kind of been taking out all the challengers in his way. I know he had a close matchup with Steve Erceg, but you got to give Alexandre Pantoja his due, man. He is a very tough fight for everyone. He's well-rounded, he's got grit, he's got heart, and he is absolutely relentless. So what's it going to take to beat Pantoja? It's going to take somebody that's probably a finisher, someone that can put him in danger, or someone that can match him strength for strength. For this one, I had a hard time nailing down one specific flyweight, so I have two nominations that I would go with, and that is one, Tatsuro Taira, right? We've seen Tatsuro Taira. He was someone maybe I wasn't going to put on this list until his most recent outing where he got that, impressive finish over Perez. This is a guy that has pretty good striking on the feet. He's got good range. He's got good speed. He's improving every time out. And what comes with Tatsuro Taira is the grappling and in particular, the finishing threat when it comes to the submissions. And like I said, if you're in there and you're going to be in a 5-round dogfight with Pantoja, really hard to pick against Alexandre when it comes to that at this point. So if there's someone that can go in there, maybe match the grappling of Pantoja, maybe be able to match the pace and catch him in some sort of submission, I could see Tatsuro Taira possibly causing him some issues. And then my second nomination would be Amir Albazi. And I know Amir, he's had some setbacks. He's been away for a little while, and he's got a return bout coming up against Brandon Moreno at UFC Edmonton, the fight night. And Amir Albazi, he's one of those guys that whether you're a fan of his style or not, this guy's strong for the weight class. He's got good grappling. He's got some pop on the feet. And I believe that he's one of those guys that's gritty, tough, durable, and can go toe-to-toe with someone who imposes their physicality upon another fighter. And that's what we've seen Alexandre Pantoja be able to do to a lot of his competition, is if he can't outskill you, if he can't, finish you, he's going to outwork you. He's going to outdog you. And if you want to bring someone to, the forefront that I think could maybe outdog him, especially as Pantoja gets a little later in his career, I think it could be the young and hungry and confident Amir Albazi. So these are my who I think could be the toughest fights for Pantoja down at flyweight, which flyweight is a little bit on the rise now. We got some fun contenders in that weight class. Moving on, bantamweight, new champion Merab Dvalishvili. Now, this is a tough matchup for anybody, man, because Merab, his striking isn't the greatest. But what we've seen inside, just throughout the history of fighting in terms of MMA and mixed martial arts, is if you have a significant threat when it comes to the grappling, it makes your striking that much better because people's brain is kind of compromised, right? They're worried about getting taken down and they get caught with shots, and it makes you very hesitant. And that's what we just saw with Sean O'Malley. He just couldn't pull the trigger because he was constantly worried about Merab trying to take him down. So you need someone that can match the grappling of Merab, number one. You need someone that has good cardio, has a good pace as well, and has good conditioning, because that is Merab's best weapon, is his pace, pressure, and cardio. And what you also need is someone that has a finishing threat, because if you go 5 rounds with Merab, it's very hard for me to see anyone in the bantamweight division, which I think is the most stacked division in the UFC, by the way. It's going to take a finisher, in my opinion, to get that done. And who can match Merab when it comes to the grappling and who can outstrike him? Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, I think that there's no mystery to this. I feel like we all could be on the same page when we say inside the bantamweight division, a guy that just beat Corey Sandhagen, who is looked at as one of the most well-rounded bantamweights. It was a big step up in competition for Umar. Umar has this skill set to be able to beat Merab. Now, can he? Yet to be seen. I believe that this is going to be the next fight the UFC looks to book, and it absolutely should be, because this is a very interesting style matchup. And Umar, what we saw and what we've seen throughout his career, he has outstanding wrestling, he has outstanding submissions, and he has got very, very, very good striking. And he is a much better striker than Merab. He has better submissions than Merab. The question becomes, what happens when Merab shoots 50 million takedowns? Can Umar defend those? Can he keep the fight on the feet? Will he get tired? Because when it comes to grit and just dogging out a fight, we have seen Merab Dvalishvili do that many, many times, but we have seen he is able to get clipped. We saw Henry Cejudo hurt him. We saw Marlon Moraes hurt him. I thought maybe O'Malley was going to be able to land some shots, but it turns out if you don't have any bit of if you're hesitant in front of Merab and you don't pull the trigger, you basically have no shot at beating the guy. He's just going to run you right into the ground. So if you're looking for someone that can go in there, go toe-to-toe with him with the grappling, be better than him on the feet, and possibly finish him, I think Umar Nurmagomedov would be the toughest stylistic matchup for Merab Dvalishvili right now at 135 pounds. Moving on to the featherweight division, the current champion, we have one Ilia Topuria, who I think is one of the best featherweights we've ever had. Obviously, he needs to go out there, defend the title, and stack up some wins to really build that resume to help back that case, right? Because I could sit here and tell you I think that he's one of the most skilled featherweight champs we've ever had, but his resume is still very light. He just won the title over Volkanovski. He hasn't beat a ton of contenders inside the division. I know he beat Bryce Mitchell, who's, a back-end ranking guy at the time. He beat Josh Emmett, who I think was right outside the top 5 at the time. And then he runs right through Volkanovski, who was coming off a KO loss, to Makhachev. So a lot of people don't maybe give Ilia the credit he deserves. But there's 2 nominations I have here, and one of those is because he's scheduled to fight him. That would be the Blech train Max Holloway, right? I feel like it would be unfair to say Max Holloway isn't going to be a very hard fight for Ilia. While I think Ilia can beat Max, Max is still a guy that's really never been knocked out. He's never been TKO'd. He has been submitted by Poirier early, back at featherweight, way back in the day when we had a young Max Holloway, a young baby Holloway. And so it's possible to finish Max Holloway. We just haven't seen many people do it other than the armbar from Poirier. I mean, this guy's as durable as they come. He's a fantastic striker, one of the best strikers in the UFC, coming off a sensational performance over Justin Gaethje. He's oozing with confidence. He's the current BMF champ. And what we've seen from Holloway, man, he's one of the best 45ers of all time. He's one of the best 45ers of all time. And if there's a guy that can go in there and make anyone look like a fool, even when you count him out, it's Max Holloway. It's Max Holloway. So he absolutely, I think, is a tough fight for Ilia Topuria, because they're already booked, which is why I wanted to put this one on here. But then if there was no fight booked, I would be saying Diego Lopez. And Diego Lopez, he's someone that's had a very, very interesting career, right? Comes on to the Contender Series, battles a little bit of adversity, and now he has just been on an absolute tear inside the featherweight division. He has very explosive striking. He's got good leg kicks. He has outstanding jiu-jitsu. You just saw what he was able to do to Brian Ortega, basically batter him around for 3 rounds. And he is maturing right before our very eyes, because he is absolutely, he's right on the cusp of being a big star star inside of the sport. And to go out there at the Sphere, hurt Brian Ortega badly. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen Brian Ortega really that hurt to where he was dropped badly to where it was like, oh my God, is Diego about to finish him? Like, is T-City about to get KO'd? And, you know, he kind of laid off the gas a little bit. I think he was cautious because he didn't want to empty the gas tank because, like I have said before, Diego's very explosive, but he tends to fatigue and get a little tired in those later rounds. We didn't see a lot of that against Ortega. He is a very, very dangerous fighter for Ilia because of the power, because of how aggressive he is, because of that confidence and the jiu-jitsu he has in the back pocket to match the grappling that Ilia has that a lot of people tend to forget about. Diego Lopes is absolutely a very dangerous fight for Ilia Topuria. Moving on to the lightweight division. We have the current champion, Islam Makhachev, and there's no mystery that, in my opinion, this is the pound-for-pound number one fighter in the sport. I believe in the updated rankings, he is the number one pound-for-pound fighter, or at least he should be. This man is absolutely sensational. He's incredibly well-rounded. When you look at Islam, there's really no weaknesses, right? I think a lot of people thought that the boxing was going to be a little bit of a weakness, and we saw that he was basically able to outstrike Dustin Poirier. This man is absolutely spectacular. He's good everywhere. So when you look at Islam, he's one of the few fighters inside the UFC that I think when you look at him, you're like, I don't think that there's any weakness. It's just a matter of catching him, in a submission that, you were able to surprise him with or catch him with a shot that he didn't see coming, because we have seen him in some tough fights. We saw him against Volkanovski the first time. We saw him against Poirier in that recent outing. If you take him into a dogfight and you can get him to, to exchange with you in the pocket, you can possibly clip the guy. But again, we saw him eat some nasty shots from Poirier. We saw him eat some shots from Volkanovski. The man is tough as well. He's a very, very hard fight. So if I am going to nominate somebody to be the toughest matchup for Islam Makhachev, it's who is probably going to be his next opponent in Arman Tsarukyan, right? We've already seen Islam fight Poirier. We've seen him fight Volkanovski. We've seen him already fight Charles Oliveira. So some of those names are kind of off the board. And when you look around stylistically, you could say a guy like Gaethje, he's got power, he's got the leg kicks, but at the end of the day, we know that Islam's probably going to resort to the grappling, because with these guys, man, with Team Habib, they always have a brilliant game plan, and they always, because these guys are so well-rounded now, they just take the fight to where they're better than you, right? If you're good on the feet, they're just going to go to the grappling. If you have pretty good grappling and you're on the feet, they're just going to stand and strike with you. And what a luxury that is to have a skill set like that. But if there's someone that can go in there and give Islam a tough fight, I believe it's Arman Tsarukyan. Why? Well, we already saw them fight before, and that was Islam probably his toughest fight to date, or at least one of them inside of his career. And Arman Tsarukyan, his striking has improved. He has dangerous power, but he also has very, very good grappling of his own. And if you don't have good grappling coming into a matchup with Islam, you really don't stand a chance. He's just going to take you down. He's going to submit you. He's going to hold you down and make it a very dirty, grimy type of fight to where you're just going to fatigue, and then he's able to eventually get you out of there or win a decision. But with Arman, his cardio is improving. He has good wrestling. His striking is improving. I think he is a hard fight for Islam Makhachev. I would still lean towards Islam to win the fight. That's who I would pick to still win. But if someone is going to be a tough challenge for Makhachev, I think it's definitely Arman Tsarukyan, and I think that we will see this fight sooner rather than later. Moving on to the welterweight division. Newly crowned champ Belal Muhammad, who was able to run right through Leon Rocky Edwards at UFC 304. This is a tough fight for everyone in the division. This is a tough fight for everyone in the division, man. And you don't have to be a fan of Belal Muhammad. You don't have to be a fan of his fighting style or whatever. This man is a horrible matchup for everyone inside the division. Why? His striking is dramatically improved. His boxing actually looks clean. It looks crisp. His pace, his pressure, his strength, his durability. I mean, Belal Muhammad checks all the boxes. He's basically a guy that doesn't have many holes right now. And whenever you see a guy that is, I believe he's 36 years of age, finally win the title, finally get his opportunity that the UFC had just kind of been dangling over his shoulder, made him take the long, hard road. He finally gets the title shot, runs right through Leon Edwards. He puts everyone on notice. And not only that, he's getting better and better and better each time out. So what's it going to take to beat Belal? We need a finisher. We need a finisher because if you're going to go in there and you're just going to, kind of go back and forth with them and you're not going to be able to defend the takedowns, he's just going to drown you and beat you by unanimous decision. He's going to piece you up on the feet a little bit. You're going to stand and try to strike with him. He's going to dip underneath. He's going to take you down. And he's just going to make it a grueling fight for you and make you just kind of want to quit. Belal Muhammad's a tough matchup. So this was kind of hard for me to pick, but I got to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov. And this other one I'm going to get to in just a minute because I got to explain myself, I think, a little bit, and you'll hopefully understand where I'm coming from here. Shavkat Rakhmonov seems like the guy that's probably going to get the next opportunity, right? I know Kamaru Usman's name's been getting thrown around in there. He's lost 3 fights in a row. I know the one was on short notice, and some of them were close. But look, Shavkat Rakhmonov is undefeated. He's running through everybody. He's finishing everybody. We've never seen anyone finish Wonderboy Thompson like that. This dude is dangerous. He's tall. He's rangy. He's got power, and he has outstanding submissions, and he's got good grappling of his own, and it just makes you wonder. Whenever you see a guy like this start bursting onto the scene and start finishing guys inside the welterweight rankings, a guy like Wonderboy who never gets taken down and submitted like that, it makes you wonder what would happen if he fights the champion. What happens if he fights a guy that's ranked 2, 3, whatever, inside the top of the division? Shavkat Rakhmonov has a dangerous threat. I don't think he beats Belal Muhammad, but I think that he is still a tough challenge given that he is dripping with confidence. He has the finishing threat. He's a tough fight. And the reason I have Joaquin Buckley on here, right? I know a lot of people, they might laugh and go, why the hell would you say Joaquin Buckley? I'm not saying I think Buckley beats him. But where I'm coming from is inside the welterweight division, man, I told you, stylistically, Belal is a hard fight for everybody. He's a miserable matchup for just about everyone. And if you look at the top of the division, you have JDM, you have Leon Edwards who just lost, you have Kamaru Usman who's a little bit older and been sidelined for a while. You've seen, Jack Della Maddalena, and a lot of these guys, one, they don't have outstanding strike, or like Usman has decent striking, but it's not outstanding. He doesn't have a high output. Belal Muhammad would put the pace on him. He would, beat him in terms of the output and in terms of the pace and the pressure, I think. JDM, he would just get wrestled by Belal Muhammad. Ian Gary would just get wrestled by Belal Muhammad. So these other top guys in the weight class that haven't, and Belal's fought the other guys, right? So there really isn't many options. And when I look at Buckley, he's a guy that has been unstoppable at 170. And what we've seen from Buckley is I feel like it takes someone who doesn't go in there with this super strategic approach to fight Belal that could beat him. Because if you go in there and you're like, look, I'm going to sit around on the outside. I'm only going to jab in this round. I'm going to try to look for a pull counter. I'm going to be all tactical. I think that Belal's just going to pick you apart in terms of the striking. He's going to mix everything up, and he's just going to tire you out. To where if you get a big, strong guy who's been on an absolute tear at 170 in Joaquin Buckley, who has a fight with Wonderboy coming up, who's big for the weight class, has fought at 185, who has tremendous power, who has unpredictable striking and is very aggressive, that also has improved in terms of the wrestling and just doesn't give a fuck, right? But Joaquin Buckley has that I don't give a fuck attitude. I'm going to play the peekaboo game. I'm going to get on the inside and I'm going to try to put my power on you. I think that's a guy that would fight like he has nothing to lose. And someone that fights like they have nothing to lose, that doesn't fight the most tactically, they can be very, very dangerous to someone who does fight very tactically. So that's why I'm saying Joaquin Buckley, because to be honest, I don't see who gives Belal that much of an issue. And I'm just kind of going with a little bit of a Hail Mary pick here with Joaquin Buckley. Now moving on to the middleweight division. The current champion, we have Dricus Du Plessis. Now, what are you looking at with DDP? You're looking at a guy who is just, what he's fighting, it just doesn't look that pretty. I mean, it doesn't look pretty, but what we know is it's highly effective. He's got great power. He's got good cardio, despite what people have said in the past about his cardio. I've sat up here and said this guy has good cardio. Him fixing his nose has done wonders. He's powerful. He's strong. He's got good grappling. He is a very, very well-rounded fighter, but he is still hittable. He's there in range. He's there to hit. And when it comes to challenges, it seems like DDP, he's beaten everybody since he's been in the UFC. And we kind of look at this guy like maybe he's a stylistic issue, maybe not. So I have a couple nominations here because with DDP, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody. And I have 3 names on here, and I'm going to explain each and every one of them. Number 1, I have Sean Strickland. Now, a lot of people are probably going to disagree with this, and let me explain why I have Sean Strickland. The hardest fight that we have seen DDP in thus far, he had a very good fight with Israel Adesanya, but the only one that was really able to stand in front of him for 5 rounds and go toe-to-toe with him has been Sean Strickland. Now, one of the issues I have with Strickland, he's very basic. He basically only throws a jab, an occasional right hand, and a bunch of front kicks. But my reasoning is, if you don't have good defensive grappling, if you are a guy that fatigues and gets tired, Dricus Du Plessis is going to beat you. He's going to beat you. He's going to resort to the grappling. He's got a very good coach. They always implement good game plans. So when Strickland fought DDP, not only was it a close fight, but Strickland has outstanding grappling. So if DDP takes him down, Sean can get back to his feet. And when it comes to the striking, that jab of Strickland's is one of the best, if not the best in the sport. Whether you like the guy or not, he has an outstanding jab that does a number on his opponents, and he has a good straight right hand that he lands that can hurt you, and those front kicks and his fighting style is so awkward and weird that I think it is very troublesome for a lot of fighters. And like I said, his ability to be defensively responsible in the grappling does give DDP a hard fight. So even if they fight again, I don't know if that Strickland beats him. I think that DDP should definitely be favored to win that. I still think that considering what we saw the first time, Strickland is definitely a tough fight for DDP. Now, secondly, I have Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I'm putting an asterisk next to this because at UFC 308, we see Khamzat face a top contender at middleweight. We've seen him at welterweight face top contenders. We saw him take on Kamaru Usman. I know it was short notice. It was at 185, and so there were some different things there. But DDP, yes, he does have good grappling. But a guy that has the caliber of grappling like Khamzat Chimaev, I don't know that we've seen DDP face somebody like that. And again, if Chimaev wouldn't be able to go in there and ragdoll him and get him out of there early, the longer the fight plays out, I think DDP would be able to finish Chimaev. But because Khamzat has such a unique style, he's such a specialist in what he does, I think Chimaev could possibly, depending on how he looks at middleweight against Whitaker, like I said, there's an asterisk next to this. I think Chimaev could definitely be a tough challenge for him. Now, I also have Fluffy Hernandez on here. And I know that I said we're looking for people that are kind of proven in the division. They've ran through some of the top competition. But I'm making a little bit of an exception here for Fluffy Hernandez. And the reason for that being is stylistically, right? That was one of my pieces of criteria. Stylistically, Fluffy Hernandez can match the grappling of DDP. He can match the pace of DDP. And I think in terms of the striking, while I would give a little bit of the edge there to Dricus, I still think Fluffy Hernandez is one of the dark horses in this division. And you could nominate several people to give DDP a hard fight because middleweight is absolutely loaded right now. So again, all basically off of opinion. But I think Fluffy, with his pace, with his pressure, with his grappling, with his submission skills, and his improved striking, I think it's a hard fight for just about everybody in the division. I know he has a tough fight with Michel Pereira coming up. I think Fluffy Hernandez could be a very hard fight for DDP. Moving on to the light heavyweight division, we have Alex Pereira. No mystery here when it comes to, what's a hard fight going to look like for Alex Pereira? It's going to be someone that you got to have good striking against the guy. You got to have at least decent striking, and you have to have grappling. You have to have something that can cause a little bit of concern for Poatan. And I think we all know who that guy is. That is Magomed Ankalaev. Now, this is the fight that should have been happening, but again, there's all sorts of whatever's going on here. So it's Khalil Roundtree versus Poatan. But Magomed Ankalaev is definitely the hardest fight, in my opinion, for Alex Pereira. And you could make an argument and say Jan Blachowicz because, he was one of the hardest fights for Poatan at 205 so far. But one of the things that I think gets overlooked when it comes to Magomed is, yes, he does have good wrestling. That's not necessarily why I'm picking him as the hardest fight, because I do think that he has wrestling that could pose some issues to where he's able to take Poatan down and control him and this and that. But Ankalaev is not much of a finisher in terms of the grappling. He doesn't have outstanding ground and pound. He doesn't have outstanding submissions. He basically grapples for control. But what he does have is outstanding boxing. He has very good hands. He has a good straight left hand. He has a good round kick of his own. He does have a good right hook. He's got a good jab. He has crisp, clean hands, and he throws good straight shots. And what we have seen give Alex Pereira some issues inside of his career. good, straight, fast hands down the middle. And Magomed Ankalaev's left hand, I think, could be very troubling for Poatan Pereira. While I think that, again, Poatan has a very good shot at beating Ankalaev, this is a guy that has a well-rounded skill set, someone that can threaten the grappling, someone that has very, very good striking. A lot of people are like, oh, well, Ankalaev will just wrestle him. I think Ankalaev could go in there and strike with him. Now, would his legs get torn apart? Possibly. Could he get knocked out by a left hook? Of course, that's all possible. But in terms of the striking, I believe that Magomed has some very underrated striking. I believe that he has outstanding hands to where he could actually hurt Poatan on the feet. Does it happen? I don't know. But I definitely think that he is the toughest matchup at light heavyweight right now for Alex Pereira. Moving on to the heavyweight division. This is where things get a little interesting because we've heard Jon Jones, as I've been saying on my channel, and I know a lot of us have felt this way, that Stipe versus Jon Jones is a retirement fight for both guys. And I think that that's one of the reasons they've been having Tom Aspinall wait in the wings as far as being an interim champ and kind of keeping him around, is just when Jon and Stipe retire, they're just going to elevate Aspinall to the actual champ. But Jon Jones is one of the best, right? He has an outstanding fight IQ. He's very well-rounded everywhere. But one of the issues that we've seen with Jon in the past at light heavyweight, right? We saw a sample against Sealgan where he ran right through him to win the title. Where Jon runs into issues is guys that have really good boxing and can defend the takedowns. And if Jon is stuck standing in front of you and you can turn it into a boxing match and you can pressure him, Jon struggles. We saw that against Alexander Gustafsson. We saw that against Dominic Reyes. We've seen this with Jon Jones. So there's one man that we all know who would be the hardest fight for him, and the man that he is avoiding, that would be Tommy Aspinall. Tom Aspinall has outstanding boxing. He's got sensational power. He has good footwork. He has good grappling. While I think that it would still be a very interesting fight, I think that people that are writing off Jon and just saying Aspinall would destroy him, I don't necessarily agree with that narrative. I do agree that Aspinall is a very bad matchup for him, and I would favor, I think, Aspinall to win this fight. But if it goes past the first round, I think Jon Jones can beat him. I think Jon's grappling is better. He has good elbows. He's got good kicks. His issue is the boxing and the power of Aspinall, and the youth of Aspinall would be an issue. But I even extended the heavyweight thing here. In anticipation that Jones and Miocic retire, we now have Aspinall as the heavyweight champion. So what does that look like? Well, he's kind of beaten a lot of the guys already, but I have two people here that I think would be the toughest stylistic matchups for Tommy Aspinall for two different reasons, because they both are very different stylistically, and the first one being Sealgan. Now, I know you could sit there and say, well, Jon Jones just ran right through him and Aspinall would beat Jones. And listen, styles make fights. And what we've seen from Sealgan, he is a brilliant striker on the feet. He's like Tom Aspinall, where these guys are like aliens in the heavyweight division. You shouldn't be able to, it should be illegal to move like that at heavyweight. You shouldn't be 250 and 60 pounds moving around like a lightweight. And Tom Aspinall bounces around like a lightweight in there. Sealgan's bouncing in and out of range like he's Nasruddin Imavov. Like, this guy is so athletic and strong for the weight class. I think that his overall striking ability and how speedy and technical he is could pose some issues for Aspinall, especially if the fight can go on. My only issue here, and the reason I brought in Almeida to this, is I think Aspinall would be able to resort to the grappling and be able to do some damage to Sealgan in terms of the grappling, whether it's just taking him down and mauling him, whether it's submitting him, whether it's, whatever. I think the grappling of Aspinall would be the difference in the fight. But if it got stuck on the feet and it drug out later on, I could see Sealgan being a little bit of an issue. And then I also have Jailton Almeida in here. Now, Aspinall's already beaten Volkov. He's already beaten Curtis Blades. He's already beaten Sergey Pavlovich. So those names are kind of off the board. So in the heavyweight division, we're not left with a lot of names on there. Now, I know styles make fights, and I know Almeida had lost to Curtis Blades. So you're saying, well, Tom Aspinall ran through Blades. Why would Almeida be an issue? Well, one of the issues I think with Almeida is I think he's absolutely a dangerous fight for everyone in the division. He has outstanding grappling. He has really good jiu-jitsu. He's a huge submission threat. And he's very athletic, and he's light and nimble for the weight class. So if you're looking for someone that has speed and is nimble, I think Almeida could, I'm not saying he can match it with Aspinall, but I don't think he's at as big of a disadvantage athletically compared to a lot of the other heavyweights. And in terms of the grappling, I think he's right there with Aspinall, if not maybe a little bit better. We don't know. But in terms of the striking, he would definitely be in a world of trouble. Tom Aspinall is a far better striker than him. But again, what we have seen at heavyweight is if Almeida is able to get him down, and if he could just be a little bit meaner in terms of the grappling, landing some nasty elbows, utilizing ground and pound, Jailton Almeida is a dangerous fight for everybody, because if he's able to take you down and he's able to control you and he can get a little bit meaner, we have seen what he is able to do to guys. He is able to make easy work, submit people, take them down. Jailton Almeida, while I think Aspinall would still beat him, I still think he's a guy that necessarily can't be overlooked and ruled out as a possible threat to a top Aspinall title reign. But these are who I think the toughest matchups would be for each champion inside the UFC. Let me know what you all think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, help me out. I would greatly appreciate it. And turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I appreciate you all. See you next time.